If you're new here, welcome. If you've been following me for a while, you already know that I sometimes share a bit too much. But this time, it's different. This isn't a story I'm proud of, but it's mine. And I guess I'm telling it because maybe, just maybe, someone out there has felt the same way. It was supposed to be a short layover, only 2 hours. Just a brief stop in Denver on my way home to Boston. My wedding was just 6 days away. Everything had been planned down to the last detail. My fiancé, Daniel, had just texted me a picture of the ring box, playfully writing, "Ready for forever?" I smiled when I saw it. Not a big smile, more of a tired one. We had been together for 5 years, and honestly, the final stages of wedding planning aren't very romantic. It's mostly logistics, family arrangements, seating charts, napkin colors. I never doubted my love for him, but I was exhausted, and something inside me felt dull. There wasn't time to unpack that feeling, though, because an hour after landing, the gate agent made the announcement no traveler wants to hear. Mechanical problems. Flight canceled. Rebooking underway. I sighed, pulled my carry-on closer, and called Daniel. He was calm. Of course. Get a hotel, baby. Rest. I'll take care of the florist. So I did. I found a nearby hotel, ordered room service, and tried to convince myself it was fine, just a small hiccup. The next morning, I returned to the airport early, but delays turned into another cancellation. This time, it was the weather. Denver had been hit with an unexpected late spring snowstorm. 3 days, they told us. 3 whole days until the next available flight home. I should have cried or yelled, but instead I just laughed. A dry, strange sound that escaped my chest before I could stop it. Maybe it was the stress, the constant pressure, the upcoming wedding, but something inside me cracked a little. That's when I noticed him. He was sitting across from me in the gate area, worn jeans, a hoodie, a backpack between his feet, reading a book with a bright orange cover. I think it was Murakami. He looked up at my awkward laugh and raised an eyebrow. "Rough day?" I nodded. "You could say that." "Let me guess, flight canceled too?" "Yeah, and I have a wedding to get back to." His expression shifted, not in judgment, just in surprise. "Yours?" "Yep." That could have been the end of it, but it wasn't. His name was Jamie. He was flying back to Portland after visiting his dad. Divorced, 2 kids. Easy to talk to in a way that made me forget how lonely airports can feel. When the gate agent announced the full cancellation and told everyone to come back tomorrow, I paused. Then I said something I never thought I would. "Want to get a drink or something? Since we're stuck here anyway." He smiled. "Thought you'd never ask." We went to the bar inside the airport hotel. It wasn't fancy. Sticky menus, loud TVs, bored bartenders. But somehow it didn't matter. Talking to Jamie made the place feel like a bubble, a strange, suspended moment in time where the outside world couldn't quite reach me. I told him I was getting married very soon. He didn't flinch or act uncomfortable. He just nodded and asked, "What kind of cake did you choose?" I laughed. Vanilla with lemon curd filling. My mom cried when I picked it. She wanted chocolate. "That's such a mom thing to cry about," he said. We kept talking. Hours passed. I told him how Daniel and I met in college, how he proposed during a hike, and how we'd been planning the wedding for over a year. I didn't talk about my doubts, at least not directly, but I think Jamie sensed them the way a stranger sometimes can when they're really listening. He told me about his divorce, how it caught him off guard, how he didn't realize how distant they'd become until it was too late. He didn't sound angry, just thoughtful. When the bar closed, we walked through the hotel lobby. I should have said goodnight. I was already halfway to the elevator when he said, "Want to walk a little more?" We ended up outside in the cold. The snow had stopped, but the air was sharp and clear. We were quiet for a while. Then gently he asked, "Are you happy?" I didn't answer, because the truth was complicated. I loved Daniel. I really did. He was steady, dependable, kind. But something in me, some restless, unfinished part, wanted to breathe, to be someone else, even if only for a moment. I looked at Jamie. I don't know. That's when he kissed me. It was gentle, like a question, not a demand. And I kissed him back. I didn't mean to. I didn't plan it. I didn't even feel guilty, not in that moment. It felt like my mind had gone quiet, and all I could hear was this desperate inner voice saying, "Feel something, anything." We didn't sleep together that night. I went back to my room. My heart was racing, my thoughts spinning. I stared at the ceiling for hours, trying to understand what had happened, what it meant, if it meant anything at all. The next morning, I saw him again in the hotel lobby. We didn't pretend nothing had happened. We got coffee. We walked. We talked about books, music, and where we'd go if we could be anyone else for a week. I told him I always wanted to live in Paris, to sit on a balcony, drink red wine, and pretend I could sing. He smiled and said he wanted to open a small surf shop in Costa Rica, teach kids how to balance on boards, live close to the water. We spent most of that day together. We ate cheap tacos, played cards in the airport lounge, laughed about nothing in particular and everything in between. It felt like I had slipped into a small, accidental version of life, a quiet corner of the world where I could finally breathe. And then that night, I went to his room. I know how it sounds. I'm not proud of it, but I need you to understand something. It wasn't because I didn't love Daniel. It was because I didn't fully know myself. I felt like I had been living someone else's version of what my life was supposed to be. This wedding, this future. Everyone around me seemed so sure about it, but I wasn't. With Jamie, I wasn't someone's fiancé. I wasn't the one organizing guest lists, managing spreadsheets, picking napkin colors. I was just me. The next morning, the flight was finally back on. We didn't talk much at the airport. He gave me a small smile and said, "Whatever happens next, I'm glad we met." I nodded. I didn't trust myself to speak. On the plane, I stared out the window in silence. My phone buzzed with messages from Daniel. Sweet updates. "I love you" texts. Photos of our dog wearing a bow tie. My stomach twisted. I had no idea how to go back to the life I left just 3 days ago. The airport back home felt too loud, too familiar, too real. Daniel was waiting at baggage claim, smiling wide, holding a to-go coffee and my favorite protein bar. I hugged him like I always did, but my arms felt stiff. I told myself it was just a jet lag. 3 days without you, he said, kissing my forehead. Longest stretch since college. I smiled. Missed you too. We drove home in silence for a while. I stared out the window, trying to memorize the skyline like I'd never seen it before. I kept thinking about how just a few days ago I was with someone else, someone I met by chance, someone I let touch parts of me that even Daniel hadn't. But the worst part wasn't what I did. It was how easily I could hide it. At home, everything was still just as I had left it. The seating chart on the kitchen table, the wedding playlist open on my laptop, a note from Daniel's mom on the fridge about cake flavors. That night, I took a long shower and cried, quietly, so he wouldn't hear. I kept asking myself, what now? Do I confess? Cancel the wedding? Bury it and pretend it never happened? But every time I looked at him, folding laundry, feeding the dog, checking RSVPs, he seemed so sure, so calm, so certain about us. And I hated myself for the secret sitting in my chest like a stone. The days blurred together. I smiled through final dress fittings. I posed for photos. I sent thank you notes for wedding gifts. Everyone said I looked like I was glowing. They didn't see the nights when I sat on the closet floor, reading old messages from Jamie again and again. He hadn't texted me since we landed, and somehow I knew he wouldn't. Whatever we had in that snowed-in city, it belonged there. It was fragile, fleeting, a moment that only made sense in that lost space of time. But I couldn't stop thinking about him, not because I loved him, but because he reminded me of something I hadn't faced about myself. 5 days before the wedding, Daniel found me sitting blankly at my laptop. He sat down beside me and said, "You okay?" I nodded. "You've been quiet." I tried to smile. just overwhelmed. He kissed my hand gently. We don't have to do this if you're not ready. You can tell me anything. If you're unsure or scared, we'll figure out. My throat burned. This was it. My way out. My chance to be honest. To say everything. But I lied. I told him I was just tired. That I loved him. That I couldn't wait to marry him. I don't even know why I did it. Maybe I didn't want to break everything. Maybe I didn't want to hurt him. Or maybe, and this is a thought that keeps me awake at night, maybe I just didn't want to be the bad guy. The night before the wedding, I had a dream. I was back in the airport hotel, curled up beside Jamie. But when I turned to face him, it was Daniel, and he was crying. I woke up shaking, but I still walked down that aisle. I smiled during the ceremony. I kissed him like I meant it. I danced with my father. I cut the cake. I threw the bouquet. Everyone said it was a perfect wedding, and I told myself, maybe I can forget. Maybe this is what growing up means. Choosing the life you promised, even when you don't understand all the parts of yourself yet. But I didn't forget. Not really. There was no dramatic reveal. No scandal. No forgotten message for Daniel to find. It started slowly. The distance. The way I paused before answering even simple questions. How I'd flinch when Daniel touched my back in the kitchen. The same way Jamie used to. One night, about 3 months after the wedding, Daniel sat across from me at dinner and said, "You've been somewhere else lately." I looked up from my plate. "What do you mean?" He leaned in slightly. "I mean, you haven't really been here. I know you. And this isn't you. Or at least it's not the you I married." I opened my mouth, then closed it, looked down, and cracked. I didn't tell him everything, not every detail, but enough. I told him I had met someone during the flight delay, that we talked, spent time together, that it turned into something more, something physical, that it only lasted those 3 days, that I hadn't heard from him since. But I couldn't stop thinking about it. Daniel didn't say anything for a long time. He just stared at the wall behind me, like looking at me might break something. Finally, he asked, "Did you ever love me? Or was I just safe?" That question cut deeper than if he'd yelled. I told him I did love him. Still do. That what happened wasn't about not loving him. It was about not knowing myself. About feeling pulled toward a version of me that had never fully grown up. He didn't respond. Not that night. He slept on the couch for 3 days. We barely spoke. He'd leave early, come home late. I'd pretend to be busy with work. Cry quietly in the bathroom. Rehearse apologies I never had the courage to say aloud. On the 4th night, he came into the bedroom, sat on the edge of the bed beside me. "I thought you were happy," he said. I whispered, but I was also scared. Like if I picked one version of life, all the other versions disappeared. And I panicked. He didn't move. "I could have handled scared," he said. "I could have handled confused. But you made that decision without me. You let someone else into our story." I nodded. I didn't try to defend myself. There was nothing left to say. Then he asked, "Do you want to fix this?" I looked at him. "Yes," I said. He nodded slowly. "Then it's going to take time. Work. Honesty. Next time something feels uncertain, you don't get to run." That was 6 months ago. We started therapy. First on our own, then together. We talked about expectations, fear, forgiveness. Some days we felt like strangers, awkward, raw, unsure how to touch each other again. Other days, I remembered why I fell in love with him in the first place. Because he listens, because he fights for what matters, because he sees past mistakes, and still believes in who I am. We didn't erase what happened. We faced it, and slowly, painfully, we started to rebuild. About a year after the wedding, we went out for drinks. Just the two of us. No distractions. No talk of family or stress. Just laughter. Eye contact. And something I hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. He walked me home that night, even though we lived together. And when we reached our front steps, he smiled and said, "Next time your flight gets delayed, call me." I smiled back.